Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I'm Chris with Gaming in the Keats here, and this is the round one of S1N, the team tournament out in Toledo, Ohio. So, um, this is a four-person team tournament with I believe it's what they call the Swiss pairings. Shows you how much I know. So yeah, this is a fun little team tournament that we signed up for, our crew from Baltimore, and we have one ringer with us from Pennsylvania because we couldn't get anyone else up from our club, the Titans of Ninth. So we are pulling from the Green Dragons crew. So first of all, thank you to Chris McDonald for stepping in last minute. We really appreciate it. And yeah, speaking of which, coming from Pennsylvania and Baltimore, this was about I think for us on our way up, it took us about, I think, 10 hours to get there. Um, but, in those 10 hours, we spent ruminating and pondering and circling the abyss over our team matrix all together. So, yeah, let's see how well we did. But first, we're going to go over my list for the tournament in a bit more detail, and then we'll get into the matrices. And here is my list for the team tournament. Um, I would say it doesn't really have that much nuance to it, if I'm going to be honest. I just thought it was pretty cheesy and fun. Basically, so we have a Master Divination Courtesan, and then an Adept Mavakan with Evocation, and everything aside from my 2 units of 3 Bloatflies in the list, Scouts in my own deployment zone with Darkhide. So we got 2 units of Succubi, one with full command, one with just Musician Champion. 2 units of 4 Clawed Fiends, Musician Champ. The Bloatflies for Kaleidoscopic Flesh, and I figured, well, if on the chance that I don't go first, it'd be nice if they had a little bit of protection from shooting, and of course some Furies for Darkhide shenanigans as well, and Chef. The Maw has the Unhinging Jaw, so it gives me a little bit more anti-large, along with the Bloatflies and also kind of Claw Fiends. The Courtesan's there to be super fast, throw out magic missiles, and just disrupt my opponent's flanks, hopefully. And then Succubi are there to, just try and score me objectives here and there, and they're like the meat sacks that are probably just going to die pretty quickly if I'm in the wrong matchup, and so we'll see how they do. The 4 units of Clawed Fiends are pretty interesting here because they're rather quick. It's not like 5 or 6, so they don't have the same type of damage potential, but they can still do some work when you throw them into the right target, and they're cheap enough where they can survive long enough and score you an objective, like say with Breakthrough, or possibly even Spoils of War, for example. Or I can kind of bunch them up into the center and try and hold the ground. So yeah, that was my thinking with the list. It's trying to perhaps give some gun lines some second thoughts, because I think on paper, usually gun lines can probably deal with this type of list, but if I can out-deploy them and then go first with all the scouting shenanigans, because it's not guaranteed if they drop to go first, I can get the jump on them really quick, and I've had some practice already with this list on jumping on sort of gun lines, and sort of picking like what's the target priority and how to go about doing that. So I think I know what I'm doing with it, but we shall see. And here's a picture of the full matrices of our team here. We even have little notes here. So, for example, with some matchups for me, like it's on paper, like it's an orange potentially, or maybe even a red, but with the Dark-Eyed shenanigans, I might be able to, catch my opponent off guard and turn that matchup into a different color, say yellow or even green. So we did our best to do our homework on this one, and discuss. We have, for example, this is our plan if we get matched up against each team, to hold and drop to try and avoid red matches. As you can see here, pretty much every every team we have at least one red matchup. It's not looking promising, to be honest. I think some of my personal favorites are we have some Dear God Please No, Dear God Please No, and Fuck Poison. Because yes, Legions of Sin were indeed allowed in this tournament, and both of these Legions of Sin lists were basically just like everything in the army had poison and was just super fast. So we're going into this tournament not having too high of expectations here, but we want to give it our best running, and see how we get along. In our first round, we get paired up against the last of the Brunnen-G. And yeah, so here's the matrix that we had. And this is what we ended up getting. So, not good. 3 oranges and a yellow. But, with my little asterisk here, with this ID list, it could be interesting. I do believe I can give this ID list a run for its money here, and at least try and, depending on what the objective is, I think I can do okay. It's just a matter of knowing how to deploy against it and knowing when to pressure my opponent's list. So we had Dwarven Holds against Highborn Elves. We also had VC against Ogre Khans, which we had as a yellow, and then we had Warriors of the Dark Gods against their Beast Herds. So it's not looking good, but like I said, we're gonna give it our all, damn it. So for my opponent's list, it is Infernal Dwarves, and he's got 2 scary characters. One is a prophet on a Kadim chariot, which is interesting. And he's got the Kadim binding, a great weapon, the tablet of Vezodinesh, and the breath of the brass bowl. So if he wanted, he could get 2 breath weapons from occultism, like the brass bowl one, and then the breath of corruption. So that's pretty gross. And then his overlord is even worse, actually. So he's on a little bull, the baby bull of Shamut, and he's got his Eye of the Bull shooting weapon, an infernal weapon on the Onyx core, Basalt Infusion, the Ring of Desiccation, so he makes you flammable, and then he does D3 wounds, of course, if you're flammable, and then he's got the Luger's Dice to make him less, or more difficult to kill, and then he's got a nice little vassal conjurer with the Book of Arcane Mastery, so 2 witchcraft spells there, 15 Citadel Guard with flintlock axes. He's got his vassal levies with paired weapons, bows, and musicians. 27 Disciples of Disciples of Lugar with great weapons. The icon of Asheruk. He's got 2 Naphtha Throwers. He's got a Kadim Titan. This is not the combat one, but the shooty one, and then he's got an Infernal Engine. Both here have these rocket batteries. So, yeah, I've already gotten... So, when we were practicing for this tournament, I did practice against a list like this, not so much in terms of Infernal Dwarves, but actually in terms of Dwarven Holds. And you can... if I'm patient, depending again on what the objective is, you can just not deploy within the Naphtha Thrower range, and then try and pick off small points, say the Kadim Titan and the Prophet actually is what I'd go for, and then pick up some of these small points here and there, and do my best to mitigate the incoming magic damage from occultism with the number 6 spell of divination. I'm not saying it's a solid plan, or not saying it's a good plan, but it has proven to be decently effective. I think where my list starts to struggle is when you're overloading with damage spells and the shooting prowess. So I definitely preferred the Infernal Dwarves list over the Highborn Elf list, if I would, just because the Highborn Elf list, it's harder to deploy against it due to their longer range, and that list had like 3 bolt throwers, a whole bunch of archers, like the Lion Chariot dude and the Nova Griffin dude, so like the counter-charging elements, and he had the Master Pyro, so it was just like, oh, gross. So we gave me this one just to avoid the red matchup as well for our VC player. So let's see how it gets along. And here's a deployment. It's a custom map. I know that they were using maps from the map pack, but on New Recruit, they didn't have the map listed in there, so I didn't get any of the maps this tournament on which one we were using, but they were using some of the map pack tournaments. And yeah, it was Frontline Clash and Hold the Ground. Pre-game thoughts for me here is just, like I said earlier, I'm trying to focus on using my divination missiles to target the Titan and the Prophet. And perhaps, depending on how he positions his Prophet, I might be able to get a cheeky charge with the Clawed Fiends, because the Bull and the Prophet are the 2 units in my opponent's list where the Claw Fiends get their +1 to hit and +1 to wound against. So I'm not sure my opponent will give me that, but here's to hoping, right? My plan is really just to deploy out of the range of the Naphtha Throwers, and then if I can rush those 2 Naphtha Throwers and take out the small points, then I can actually contest the objective in the center, because I do feel like I can fight the Disciples with 2 units of Succubi, because other than the Disciples and his Bull, everything else in the list can't quite deal with the Succubi, with all of those attacks. Like, he's not going to throw goblins in there, and there's only 15 Citadel Guards, so I'm happy to try and, once I feel like it's secure, win the objective in the late game. And then, honestly, like, I don't really have an answer for the Overlord on a Bull. Like, yeah, I can try and, again, magic missile him off, but, like, he's, like, he's just a problem. And then, yeah, my priority targets are going to be the Titan and the Prophet, and then I go for the Flamethrowers. So that's, like, my overall thinking in terms of this game plan here. So for my spells, I chose Fate's Judgment, Stars Align, Unerring Strike, and Mirror of the Veil on the Courtesan. Again, I'm trying to utilize that potential MR3/MR3 bubble that she can produce against any of this occultism damage coming in. And then for the Maw, I'm going to have Whispers of the Veil and Spectral Blades, of course. For my opponent, they chose the Hereditary, Pentagram of Pain, Marked for Doom to go after my characters, of course, and Grave Calls. So I was a bit surprised that my opponent did not take Breath of Corruption, but I guess they figured Pentagram of Pain was cheaper, and you can heal yourself, so that makes sense. And the Vassal Conjurer has Raven's Wing and Wheel Turns, so it can really mitigate the damage coming in, say, from the Mauvicon or the Courtesan onto those infantry units. So there you have it. So for my deployment, we have Ruins, a water feature, a fence, field right there. We have a hill here. We have a forest, and we have an impassable right here. So I won the side to choose sides. And normally I think you could indeed make the argument to say not give my opponent the side with the hill. However, I just kind of thought, well, I feel like I can deploy, because he's not using cannons, he's using flamethrowers, I can kind of deploy accordingly and not have to worry about that too much, just because the flamethrowers only have 24-inch range, and I can still kind of contest the objective from this side if I sweep around, and I just don't want to be in a field because that gives my units, that makes them flammable anyway, and so I'm just trying to avoid as many rerolls to wound as possible. So that was my thinking there. So from left to right, my side on the very far left, I have a unit of bloatflies, the courtesan right here, who is finally completely painted and based, and she's magnetized on her base, so I'm excited to use her in this tournament. And then we have the Maw of the Khan, the big girl. We have my succubi, clawed fiends in the middle, succubi, furies, more clawed fiends, and bloatflies out to this side. From my opponent's left to right, our left to right, we've got the engine, we got the Titan, we have one Naphtha Thrower, vassals, his prophet on the Qadim chariot, the Citadel Guard, another unit. Oh, this is the Lugar unit, the bull, vassals, Naphtha Thrower, and vassals, and his vassal conjurers in this unit here. So because my opponent dropped to go first, it's not actually guaranteed because of all the Darkhide silliness. So I got to counter deploy a bit. I think here I could have just shifted these units over just a bit more, just to give the succubi and the fiends more breathing room to get into the center, because right now this left succubi unit is just a bit too far out, in my opinion. So, however, I deployed the clawed fiends in a way to also give me some room to contest the center, in case he wants to bring his prophet forward, and potential countercharge there, and the courtesan strider, so she's just gonna, and -1 to hit, so if he wants to move up and try and shoot at her, there'll be a lot of penalties for trying to hit with the rocket batteries. And yeah, so succubi are just outside of 24 inches of both flamethrowers, so I'm happy with my deployment for the most part. And these bloatflies they're just gonna beeline it for that flamethrower, depending on what this bull does. So yeah, that is my thought process there. For my opponent's turn 1, they move up like so, and so he's kind of creating a bit of a convex shape here. The Naphtha Thrower stays still, and so he's just going to plan on camping on the objective and trying to win it early. The bull comes behind the house here and is looking out this way. Vassals stay put, and other than that, now my opponent does do this. He gives the clawed fiends a 9 with Swift Stride here. I think my opponent did calculate that as well. I think that was on purpose, if I remember correctly. So perhaps he was maybe he was thinking I wasn't going to charge or not. I don't know. Or maybe he just didn't care. And thought that the prophet could probably just take him, and then he has his counter charges. But yeah, so this is my opponent's movement here. With magic, he gets the hereditary up on this succubi unit. I stop the grave calls, and then Marked for Doom puts 1 wound on this unit of clawed fiends here to your right. I think he had to march his bow units, or he didn't march yet, and shooting is inconsequential in the first round of Infernal Dwarves, so I get off pretty lightly there, I would say. Okay, my turn 1. I go for it. I charge the Clawed Fiends into his Prophet because I figured, well, now's my chance. I don't expect to kill him, but I just want to keep him there so I can essentially outmaneuver and come around this left side, so it keeps his front arc facing this way. So say, for example, with Grave Calls, he's kind of stuck in this position, and I'm able to bring my Furies up and prevent a countercharge from his Citadel Guard and the Lugers onto the Clawed Fiends. Yes, he can indeed charge with the Vassals in there, but I'm kind of like, sure. Succubi kind of adjust accordingly. This Succubi, I think, unit, they reformed and kind of backed up away from the Titan. The Maw didn't care. I believe I can't remember if I marched or I didn't march, but either way, I took DTs and didn't lose any wounds. So, yay. The Bloatflies fly out of line of sight of the Titan, but in line of sight of the engine, and my thought process here is I'm trying to get him to charge the Bloatflies, and I'm thinking with the Toxic and the Strength 6 AP3, I should do alright there, and I do have a counter charge with the Maw, in case we get stuck there, to bail out the Bloatflies in my next turn, because he doesn't really have chaff for the Maw. On my right side, I just push up with the Bloatflies. I'm saying, screw it, I gotta get at that Flamethrower. And so they just go their full distance. They also don't take any DTs from, or maybe they take one, or they might take a wound from flying out of the forest. But what I do with the Clawed Fiends here is I kind of back up because I'm waiting for the bull to come around in this area. And if I did it correctly, I should have backed up in a way where he can't get out of my line of sight, so the Clawed Fiends will have a charge on the bull in case I wish to take that charge. So that's how we're looking. In Magic, I got a boosted Spectral Blades onto the Clawed Fiends. My opponent lets this go because he's wanting to stop Stars Align on the Clawed Fiends, because this Kadim Chariot, I believe, only has a 4-up, if I'm not mistaken. So my opponent does indeed stop Stars Align, and then I also get a non-boosted Unerring Strike onto this Titan, doing 5 wounds onto the Titan. So off to a good start here, and I am happy with the Clawed Fiends getting boosted Spectral up. So I'm feeling okay. I'm feeling okay at this point. And out of nowhere, the Clawed Fiends take out the Prophet in one round. Like, what? I rolled out of the box to hit this guy. Oh my god. Like, my dice just spiked. And then I re-rolled to wound with Lethal Strike. I got, I think, 7 wounds through. And unfortunately for my opponent, he doesn't make a single save. I think this guy had 5 wounds on him too. It's either 4 or 5 wounds, but either way, like, he did not make a single save. And the Prophet goes down. And so then we have to do panics on the Goblin unit and the Citadel Guard, and both pass their panic. And so then I choose to overrun the Clawed Fiends into the Goblin unit. And this is, I mean, wow, that was big. That took off, okay, that took off a priority target. I'm very happy with that. Alright, and this is a picture of my opponent's, not only a bit of his turn 2 movement, but also at the end of the close combat phase. I didn't get his full turn 2 movement, but essentially what the bull does is the bull does fly into that space where I expected, with is able to park there. I think it's possible that he might have found a way to get out of my line of sight with the Clawed Fiends. His goblins march up in front of my Bloatflies on that right side. He shuffles, as you can see here in the center. because he charged my chaff and then reforms like so, as you see. And then you can see he charged the bloatflies and actually did quite a lot of damage to them, and I only did 1 wound back in return. And then, this is something I didn't quite account for, is when I angled the maw for a countercharge, I didn't do it well enough, and so my opponent is able to reform out of line of sight, like so, as you see here. So the maul does not see the engine, so I'm kind of like, ah, crap, I just gave him my bloatfly unit, and I don't actually have a countercharge. So, and by the way, it was at this turn where my opponent took his time out and relayed the situation with his coach. And so, I mean, I felt at least good in this situation because, like, okay, cool, I kind of opened up the game a little bit on, like, not a great matchup for me. So, all right, but my opponent's still in a solid position overall because he still has the bull and he still has the center objective pretty much on lockdown, but I am sort of dealing with that left flank, and the right flank, depending on what the bloatflies are able to accomplish, might also fold fairly soon too. So I do have to say we did this slightly out of order, but we did remember to do this combat in my opponent's round, and we were able to get it done quickly, so it didn't take up too much time. But this goblin unit did end up breaking, and so on my turn, instead of charging them potentially off the board, it's actually it's a longer distance than you think. I didn't want to fail my Discipline 7 leadership check because at this point, when the Claw Fiends hit the goblins, they're outside of 18 from the Maw of Akan. So I decided to instead, I restrained, luckily, and when they broke, and instead I charged the Naphtha Thrower, and I'm facing it away, so I have an overrun into the Kadim Titan. In further news, the Maw actually backs up, and now I can see this engine, so I'm kicking myself for that little mistake. The Courtesan passes her march check and comes around here to start threatening and coming around this side. The bloatflies, so in my previous turn, my opponent shot the bloatflies with his Naphtha Thrower, which actually reduces their advance. So the charge became actually rather long for getting into this Naphtha Thrower, and I decided the safer route was just to charge the goblins and hopefully break them, and then charge the Naphtha Thrower. That is my thinking there. So that was the decision I made. And yeah, in my magic phase, I get Spectral Blades up on the bloatflies to hopefully try and do some wounds onto this thing. My opponent stops an Unerring Strike onto the Titan, and then it's also possible that I got a small Fate's Judgment off and did an extra wound to the Titan as well. So the Titan should have 6 wounds on it at this point. It's a bit unclear, but that's sort of what we're looking at now. And yeah, I'm feeling pretty confident at this rate. Once these Naphtha Throwers fold, my plan is to now push up the Succubi and just say, deal with it. And in close combat, I do an extra 2 wounds, and my bloatflies have 1 wound remaining, and I stick. I don't pop. Oh my god. Oh god. Oh wait a second. No, that's not true. I think I do pop. I think the bloatflies actually do indeed pop. So I just threw away the bloatflies, and the engine now has 3 wounds on it. On to the other side, the goblins end up killing a bloatfly and do some wounds on the next one, and I kill a few back, but I don't break it steadfast. and he sticks, and so I'm kind of stuck there for a turn. And I'm realizing, oh wow, vassal levies with paired weapons are kind of kicking my ass right now. The fiends do kill the Naphtha Thrower, and I do overrun into the Kadim Titan. All that being said, my opponent gains 1 victory point for holding the center, as I do not hold it at the moment. You can also see these cute little incendiary markers. And oh, I didn't mention this, but I use those red little rings, the rubber bands, to indicate wounds, and then the blue ones indicate where my champion model is, and the yellow one indicates my standards. And then for the Maw, I even have green rubber rings to indicate when he starts getting over the threshold. He, she, it doesn't really matter. It's just a big honking model of awesomeness. But anyway, okay, so my opponent's turn 3. They recreate their battle line like so. I stop Twisted Effigy on this unit here, and I have to let through Raven's Wing so the goblins are able to come back over around in this area to be back within the leadership. My opponent decides to bring the bull back and get that leadership bubble back intact. So I might be, it looks like I'm kind of winning this left side, but I'm giving up points, and my opponent's still winning the objective. So we'll see. We'll see how things play out. But yeah, I'm hoping that these blowflies are able to freaking kill these goblins. And from a discipline 10 going down to 9 because of fear with no reroll, but steadfast, the goblins break. And I restrain. Okay. So, alright, that was a thing. Yeah, as you can see, they've done a total of 6 wounds to my bloatflies, so but now I have a charge onto this Naphtha Thrower. So, okay, yay, bloatflies. You broke the goblins. I'm happy about that. Into my turn 3, I charge the engine. I just need to kill it. It needs to die, and the Maw, I think, can do okay against it, with the strength 7 rerolling. And, yep. Oh, yes, and then in the Fiends combat, yeah, we didn't really do anything to each other, but my opponent sticks. I think I snuck a wound through onto the Titan, and the Titan did a wound back onto me, and we all just kind of stick around here. So in my turn, I bring the Courtesan around. I do make a decision to charge the Naphtha Thrower, and we pre-measured this, but I basically need to roll an 8 to overrun off the hill if I kill the Naphtha Thrower. I didn't choose to charge the goblins again just because I really didn't want to fail my Discipline 8 leadership check into the redirect. So I'm not sure if that was the correct play, but I chose what I think was probably a bit of a safer play. And after all, I do need these flamethrowers dead, because now, as you can see, I'm starting to push up the succubi to start contesting. However, because, like I said earlier, this succubi unit, unfortunately, was not deployed as well as they could have been, and I only have 1 scoring unit to my opponent's 2 to contest the objective, and that really, I think, was a mistake where I could have deployed a bit better to make sure that this moment does not happen. The Clawed Fiends kind of come up into this space, again trying to prevent the bull from getting out of line of sight, but also being ready to countercharge into the center if need be, and to just jump right in there if I need to contest it. So, yeah, in Magic, my opponent lets through Stars Align and Spectral Blades on the Clawed Fiends, because I think they figure that the Titan's dead at this rate. My opponent, I think, stopped Unerring Strike onto his Goblin unit, and then I don't think I get off a Whispers of the Veil onto onto the engine. I think that also could have been stopped by my opponent. So really all the magic buffs have gone on to the Clawed Fiends just to ensure that the Titan dies. So, and as you can see, the Titan did indeed die to just the weight of re-rolling divine attacks and re-rolling to wound. So yeah. And check this out. I did get the Overrun 8 right behind the hill. So that's looking good. I put some wounds on the engine. The engine doesn't do anything back to me. And so we're stuck there for one more round of combat. And so now my opponent starts crowding the objective, making sure that my succubi are not going to have an ideal charge here. He's blocking the Clawed Fiends with his bull, so his bull is actually facing out into the center, and he's giving me a rear charge with the Clawed Fiends. And then he brings the Citadel Guard up here, again, to try to guard his center. Here you can see my Clawed Fiends face towards the middle. And his goblins do rally, so they're back on top of the hill to say hello. Yeah, essentially I believe I stop Ravenswing. I stop a Ravenswing, I think, on his bull, or I stop a Ravenswing on one of his units, and unfortunately that means he does get a wheel turns up onto the disciples of Lugar. So now it's just going to be hitting on, it's just going to be 4s and 4s all the way around. Okay, you can see in my turn 4, I combo charge here with the Fiends and the Succubi into a Citadel Guard. The Maw did end up killing the engine on his turn, and so I came back over here to start threatening the center again. The Corzin just comes into the field to start threatening the center, as well as all these little small units here. She had a problem staying onto the base, I guess, with that field in there, so I took her off the base. The Bloatflies come over to, again, start threatening the rear of these units here, and they are out of line of sight from the bull, so I didn't give his bull a charge. So I'm not sure if that is the best move with them, but they did that. And I choose to charge the rear of his bull character with the Clawed Fiends. So I'm thinking, okay, I can... Maybe if the Clawed Fiends do just as well as they did with the Prophet of Lugar, like, we're gonna look good. We'll be really looking good at this point. But you'll see what ends up happening there. I didn't choose to charge the Succubi into the Disciple Lugals of Disciples. Oh man, that unit is freaking a tongue twister. The Disciples of Lugar. I don't think that was the right call. I think I actually just should have charged them, to be honest. I think my thinking here was, okay, I'm going to break this unit, if not kill them with the Succubi, and my goal is to overrun with the Clawed Fiends into the flank of the Disciples. So then that would give me 1, 2, 3 to my opponent's 2 scoring units. So that's my thought process there. But I ultimately think I just should have charged them and perhaps focus a magic buff or 2 onto this unit. Because as you can see now that my opponent has been shooting bows into this right Succubi unit, so they've been starting to take some attrition. And this is where I make a mistake. So my opponent, of course, stops Stars Align, and I am able to get off a Spectral Blades onto this Succubi unit. However, you'll notice that the Clawed Fiends are gone. And that's because when I charged in, I forgot to issue a challenge. Ah, crap. And this cost me big. This not issuing a challenge really cost me. Like, that was my mistake. And yes, the Clawed Fiends did actually get through, I think around like five or six wounds on this bull character, but unlike my opponent's dice in the first round, his dice came back and he makes all of his saves and then turns around and just pops the unit. Oh, crap. Oh, man, that's not good. Shoot. Okay. And then, to make matters worse, so I don't kill all the Citadel Guard, and what you see here is both the Succubi and the Fiends failing to catch the Citadel Guard. So I had the Citadel Guard break from the Fiends. And the Fiends needed, I think, a 6 to get into the Disciples, and they rolled a 5. And the Succubi also rolled like a 4 on Swift Stride. Both of these. It was just like abysmal. Or I think the Succubi also rolled a 5. And so I think they technically got into they like technically made it into the Disciples, but because of how awkward this positioning was and the Fiends failing, both myself and my opponent just kind of agreed that this is just a failed charge with the Succubi unit. And we really didn't know how to we really didn't know exactly how to work that out, so we just agreed like, yeah, it's a failed charge. Which is just puts me in this really, really awkward position. Yeah, that's not good. I did, when I didn't charge the Succubi into the Disciples, I backed them up so that at least the bull was in their front. And I was just sort of waiting for the oncoming charge from the Disciples with Spectral Blades, is my thinking there. But yeah, the Fiends not failing to catch this unit and not failing to hit into the flank, like, really, really hurt. And you'll see what happens next. And in this case, however, I should be winning the objective now in this moment on this round. So it's 2 points to my opponent and then 1 point to me. Okay, in my opponent's round 5, my opponent charges the bull and the Disciples of Lugar into my Succubi with Spectral Blades up. I was able to back up, of course, to allow the bull, or to not give the bull a flank, and so everything's in the front here. But my opponent does also rally the Citadel Guard. And you'll see up at the top, these cheeky goblins make a charge into my bloatflies. Into the rear of the bloatflies, nonetheless. So, uh-oh. I mean, the bloatflies are doing all right, but these goblins have proven to be quite stubborn, and are coming back for blood. So, yeah, I'm not confident about this matchup up at the top. During my opponent's magic phase, I stop the wheel turns. However, my opponent is able to get a Raven's Wing off on the Citadel Guard and move them over behind my lines here. So I think this, looking back at this, I realize this is a mistake, or at least to my knowledge it is, because you can't Raven's Wing a fleeing unit, or excuse me, you can't Raven's Wing a unit that just rallied because they are shaken. However, correct me if I'm wrong. I could be wrong in the rules, so please correct me if that is not the case in the comments, but neither myself nor my opponent caught that. So, oops. But there you have it, the Citadel Guard Raven's Wing behind here. And you can see here, this Shaman Master has popped out of this Goblin bunker. So, okay, so he looks like a juicy target for the Courtesan to Magic Missile. And wow, I mean, my Succubi like really whiff, but at the same time, he just completely crumbled the unit. I think I had like 8 left or something, and then it's an auto break, and I just crumbled. I lost by so much. So the Disciples and the Bull just completely wipe out this unit. I think I only killed about, 5 models? Yeah, the Succubi did not roll well to hit. And I was re-rolling my wounds, but yeah, that didn't really amount to anything at this rate. So my opponent now 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh well, it's going into my turn, so it's getting down to the wire. And if you notice, the bloatflies are no longer there because this frickin' goblin unit popped them. Like, I think I killed like one goblin with all of my attacks. Like, I just like, yeah, the dice have swung now. Like, I was hitting on threes, wounding on twos, and I was just rolling ones like all over the place. All my toxic attacks didn't wound, my stomps didn't wound. He just crumbled me through combat resolution. I was like, oh crap. Either that or he might have just outright killed me. Um, so this is what I do now. I mean, I decided to charge the Disciples of Lugar. I don't think this is a great plan, but I wanted to prevent the bull from coming in, to be honest, and just killing this unit. And so I reformed the succubi to face the Citadel Guard here, and yeah, I know I'm giving him a flank, but like, yeah, I'll just challenge him out, because I think I killed his champion in this unit. If he chooses to even go in there, because I think the succubi do win that. But yeah, so unfortunately, because of how blocked up I was, I couldn't really make any charges here with the Maw. I think I could have charged with the Courtesan, but because the Bull got freed up, he had these counter charges on my bigger demons, and I think this guy kills my demons, or he like really puts a hurting on them. So I was actually quite cautious at this point. So I chose to not charge, which could have also been a mistake. I don't know. Because there are no champions in these goblin units. So what instead, if you notice, my opponent moved the Vassal Conjurer out of his goblin unit here. So my plan is to missile off this guy, because I don't like him, and hopefully try and buff up this combat here so that the fiends do okay. And so sure enough, I do missile off this guy, but my opponent does stop Stars Align up onto the Fiends, and then I put a Spectral Blade up onto the Succubi, which, to be honest, I think is still the wrong call. I think it really does need to go back onto the Fiends, because they're the ones in combat. So again, these little micro mistakes are just like adding up, you know? But because this Goblin guy died, that causes a panic check on these 3 Goblin units, and guess what? The big Goblin unit failed their panic check on the Discipline 10 and ran. And they ran away from the closest unit, which was the Clawed Fiend. So they ran this way, which is also kind of awkward, because now it's blocking my Courtesan, if they rally again, from charging. So I'm just like, freaking crap. Like, this is like the perfect placement for them. Like, damn it. Like, if they rally, which on a Discipline 10 is very likely, like, they'll just be blocking the Courtesan from actually making an impact into the center. So, damn it. Yeah, that happened. The other 2 Goblin units actually passed their panic. So, but yeah, one happened to fail. So speaking of failing, so over 2 rounds of combat, the Disciples end up killing the Fiends. Oh, so this is actually the end of my opponent's turn 6, because everything is basically clumped in here, right? The Fiends just don't do well, and within the 2 rounds, just die. Which costs me big, because now I'm losing the objective again. Yeah, and so my opponent then decides to charge the bull into the flank of the succubi, and then not even worry about charging a citadel in, because he doesn't want to give up those points. So he's just chilling, and then he blocks the Maw of Akan with his goblin unit from charging into anything else aside from just goblins. So my opponent has 1, 2, 3 scoring units to my 1 now. So at this rate, I've lost the objective. And now I'm just scrambling for points. With no magic, I challenge him out and I make my steadfast check, no problem. And this is my last ditch attempt to get some points. I charge the Maw. Again, I'm hoping for, hey, maybe my opponent fails a Discipline 10 check. He's got 2 of them to make. And so, yeah, I charge into the goblins here, into their flank, and I charge the Courson into the front because these goblins, of course, they rallied. Which was such a bummer. So, yeah, hoping for some terror checks, but no, you can see he passed. I do get some magic buffs up off on the courtesan. My opponent stops. I think my opponent stops Whispers of the Veil, actually. My opponent stops Whispers of the Veil, and then I just get some magic buffs up on the courtesan to try and just kill the unit, or hopefully break them, again, to just try and get points. And depending on what happens here, my opponent still has one more break check to make, again, to get points, but he's still just beating me on the objective anyway, because goblins are insignificant. So, that being said, the courtesan kills some goblins, they make their steadfast check, no problem, and the Maw eats this unit. They do not. It's an auto break, and he runs them down. This unit makes their panic check, no problem. His bull beats up on my succubi for a little bit, but it's not enough to lose the unit or even lose half points for the unit. And there you have it, folks. That is the end of the game. So these are all the units we have left here. The courtesan, the Maw, my succubi, and my opponent has this little unit of goblins. These goblins here, his disciples still healthy, and his citadel guard still above half points. And that makes it a 13-7 to my opponent, who won the objective. It was a 10-10 on points, and no! And I lose the objective. So, well played to my opponent. I really liked how my opponent kept their patience when they lost their primary magic caster and a lot of the damage, the range damage potential, seeing as how I wasn't moving into the Naphtha Thrower range. So that was very well done there. And that was brutal. That was swinging back and forth like that was pretty crazy. The goblins failing their Discipline 10 panic and all of that was just nuts at the end. And both my opponent and I were like sweating bullets on what would happen. So yeah, we'll go into the post-game thoughts right now. So post-game thoughts, I'm happy overall with my game plan. The matchup did go as expected rating-wise. It was an orange, so I did expect to lose that one, but hopefully not too badly. And I think I gave myself actually some good opportunities to make that a yellow matchup, if not actually win on points. And I thought I did as best of a job as I could have, just given the just some of the craziness that was happening in that game. It was a really fun game. But I did make a lot of micro mistakes. Just again, I'm seeing being out of like practice playing the game consistently on the table is clearly making a difference. Forgetting to challenge with the Claude Fiend champ just made such a difference. Oh my god, I'm kicking. There's many moments. There's many. Spoiler alert, many like facepalm moments for myself in this tournament, but that's definitely one where it was just like, it's like you have it in your head and then you lose focus and you forget to do it. And you're just like, oh, crap. Oh. So that's on me. I think I was a bit too careless with the bloatflies, to be honest, at least on that left side. I did, and my opponent punished me for it, just with that, allowing my opponent to reform the engine. I could have easily checked that to make sure that couldn't have happened with the Maw for my counter charge there. So that was, again, a micro mistake on my part. And then, yeah, the Fiends killing the Prophet turn 1 was massive. That really allowed me to push that left side and just hopefully put pressure on his units in the backfield and collect points at the same time. So yeah, I'm happy overall. Like I felt like I did all right here. That being said, we got capped. Oh, that hurt. So we had two matches go as expected. My match here against ID, and then Chris's match against Highborn Elves. This went as expected. However, we did worse on our performance here. This was an orange, which turns into a red, so that wasn't great. And then, oh my goodness, our captain, James, he told me about this match, and he told me he lost the zombie dragon because he's running a zombie dragon. He lost the zombie dragon, I think, turn 2, just due to a whole bunch of hunting spears and pyro flow, like blazes on pyro flow, just like killing the dragon in one go. And so yeah, that was rough. And then I guess my opponent's hunter rolled the 3 lethal strikes to hit to take out one of his scoring vampires in the gas unit, and so he just killed him outright to like prevent James from tying the objective. So it was just it sounded like a really, really rough matchup for James. And so, oh yeah, so yep, we got capped, but we are not demoralized. We will continue on. But overall, this team was a lot of fun to play. I definitely had a lot of fun in this game, and yeah, I just a great opponent to play against. So thank you so much for the game. And with that, thanks everyone for watching. Like and subscribe if you felt the heat of this Infernal Dwarf list. Yeah, I'll catch y'all in the next one for round 2. Ciao, ciao for now.